Interestingly enough, the main reason why customers leave suppliers in our industry is because they believe that supplier doesn't really care about their business. So we try and instill a bit more trust, a bit more care into our customers. We try and understand from our customers what they need and then translate that into our buying. So by visiting our suppliers, we're purchasing with purpose, is what we call it. So we look at the supply chain and say what is available for the market. So many suppliers give us product which they think is a great product, and it just solves their problem, but it doesn't solve a customer problem. So the biggest mistakes we make in purchasing is buying cheap because we think it's great value, but there's no market for it, or it's basically trying to solve the supplier problem. And we say that all the time, particularly with overseas suppliers. A lot of them don't really understand the Australian market. It's quite an advanced market, quite a complicated market, and you just can't take something from Europe and plug it into Australia. It doesn't really work that way. In food service, the number one rule is consistency. It's always been consistency, always will be consistency. McDonald's has taught us that consistency is king. They have a very consistent product. You have to work up to 18 months in advance with our suppliers, particularly on imported products like artichokes or capers. You've got to know 18 months from now what you're going to need, which is quite difficult. Being out of stock is the ultimate crime. Efficient pricing is really critical as well. So having a pricing which is very consistent. So when we started with things like looking at nuts is a good example. Nuts are always very inconsistent in price. So it's very hard to factor in a decrease or an increase in the price of nuts. We've actually managed to iron out a lot of the differences, but what we try and do is we try and work out ahead of the crops. For example, with olives, if we know it's going to be a bad crop, we'll tend to buy in advance, and luckily we've got suppliers overseas that will say, well, Sandhurst needs 10 containers of this product. We know they're going to buy it next year like they did last year. We'll just put that aside for them, and they will also share in some of the cost reduction as well. The technology has helped us, but still the old way of doing business by trust in Asia and Europe is still king, and it's actually more important now because there's so much technology. People can stalk you and get your name and make you offers online or ring you up, and at the end of the day you know who you want to buy from. And also because we have the ability to travel to most of these places overseas, most of our suppliers, and to our farmers in Australia, we know what they're capable of, and we tend to work with the same people all the time. And I think QSR operators do the same thing. They find someone they trust and like. Nothing's a secret anymore. You can find the price of anything. You can get a Sandhurst price list within half an hour. I can guarantee you. I can get an opposition price list, but to what end? Because ultimately that price list might be something which is not reflective of what the customer wants. We've learned from the tender experience with some of the big QSRs that the tender process is a guideline, and it's designed to make what I call the incumbent sharpen their pencil. So it's just a question of saying, you are my supplier of jalapenos. Can we go to a tender? And I really want to deal with you, but can you remove your price down a little bit so that I can go back to my boss and give them something to say, listen, I've saved 5% on some jalapenos. That is less and less important these days, in my opinion, because you've got to have an element of trust. And if you don't have the trust, if you don't trust your supplier, then I think it's a fundamental problem in your supply chain.